The Peninsula Grand Ballroom was a universe of old money and newer egos. She kept her head down, walking past ladies in satin gowns and men whose cufflinks could feed entire neighborhoods. She was supposed to be invisible. That was the plan. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. Serve, then slide away. Her friend Marley had lent her the gown, the heels, and even the credentials to slip in. Marley was working wardrobe at the gala and owed Nova a favor. Just serve the drinks and act like you belong, she'd said. You'll be out before anyone notices. But someone noticed. Him. Maureen Sidney stood on the other side of the ballroom like he owned the air in the room. And maybe he did. 6'4", sharp tuxedo, skin that looked like it caught light in the right places. But it was his stillness that set him apart. Everyone else performed. He simply stood, and the room bent around him. Nova turned her back quickly, pretending to adjust the tray. It wasn't the first time she'd seen him. She'd studied him once in business school. Sidney. Consortium was a legend on Wall Street, a tech giant turned investment beast. Maureen Sidney didn't give interviews. He gave orders, and right now, he was walking toward her. Her heartbeat misfired. He stopped in front of her, didn't reach for a drink, didn't smile. You're not staff, he said. Nova blinked once, then twice. She swallowed. I'm whatever I need to be tonight. His gaze didn't waver. You crashed. Technically, she replied, shifting her weight. I'm serving. He looked her over, head to toe. You've got the posture of someone who used to sign deals, not serve drinks. Nova smirked. You've got the eyes of someone who doesn't miss a thing. He tilted his head. So what are you running from? Rent, she said flatly. And for the first time, Maureen Sidney smiled. Not the kind you show for cameras. The kind that says, I see through the show, and I still want the truth. Want to run from it together? She blinked again. Excuse me? Come with me. Let's walk. 5 minutes. Why? Because you're the most honest person I've seen in this room tonight, and because I hate pretending more than I hate parties. Nova hesitated. Her job, temporary as it was, would be over the moment she stepped away. But so was her dignity the moment she walked in, pretending not to exist. She placed the tray on a nearby table and followed him. The hotel garden behind the ballroom was silent. No photographers, no guests, no masks. Maureen walked beside her without speaking at first. I was supposed to be in Geneva tonight, he said finally. Nova glanced sideways. And yet, you're here. My father died last year. This is his foundation's gala. It felt disrespectful not to show up. She nodded. I lost my brother to job loss and depression. He was a banker, like me. They cut him out in a round of layoffs. He never got back up. Maureen's jaw flexed. I'm sorry. I don't tell many people that. I won't tell anyone, he said. She stared ahead. Weird, isn't it? All this wealth, and we're both here looking for something that has nothing to do with money. Maureen turned toward her. Do you believe in impulse? Only when I'm desperate. What if desperation was the most honest emotion we ever have? She looked at him. You really want to know? He nodded once. I lost my job because I refused to lie on an internal audit. They called it insubordination. I called it integrity. Now I sleep in shelters and bartend in ballrooms I used to network in. Maureen didn't flinch. Thank you, he said. For what? For saying that out loud. Most people in my world would rather drown in pretense than admit pain. They reached a stone bench. He sat. She remained standing. He studied her again. What if we just left? She raised a brow. One night. No legacies, no Wall Street, no broken pasts. Just two people pretending none of it ever happened. And do what? Anything but this. She smiled. You don't even know my last name. He leaned back. Then tell me. Willoughby. Waring. She blinked. Your real name? He shrugged. That's all you get. They shared a laugh. The kind that feels like shaking off the world for a second. Then he stood, pulled his phone out and tapped something. What are you doing? She asked. Booking a jet. She stared at him. You're serious? I've never been more unserious in my life. That's why I'm serious. She bit her lip. If I say yes, you'll forget pain for one night. And I'll forget power. She should have said no. Should have walked away. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, Where are we going? He grinned. Vegas. The flight to Las Vegas wasn't quiet. It wasn't loud either. It was full of glances, half smiles, unfinished questions that neither Nova nor Wareen were brave enough to fully ask. They didn't talk about money. They didn't talk about where they came from. They only talked about what they wanted to forget. Wareen sat across from her in a private jet cabin that smelled like new leather and night air. He poured champagne, real champagne this time, not the kind passed on silver trays. She accepted it with a trembling hand. To forgetting? She asked, raising the glass. To pretending, he replied, tapping his against hers. Nova didn't know how the night turned into hands, into breathless laughter, into lips pressed just below her ear. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't planned, but somehow, by the time they reached the city that never asked questions, they were already leaning into each other like magnets denied too long. She borrowed a dress from a boutique the driver found en route. He walked into the chapel in his tux, the same one he wore at the gala. But this time his bow tie was undone and his smile was reckless. The chapel wasn't romantic. It was loud, neon, the kind of place where love stories either end badly or begin with madness. And yet, Nova stood at the makeshift altar, heart galloping in her chest. Say your full name, the officiant barked. Nova Ray Willoughby, she said, giggling nervously. Wareen Arlen Sidney, he said, not laughing at all. He looked at her like she was already his. Are you sure? She whispered. I've never been less sure and more certain at the same time, he replied. I don't even know your middle name, she said. Now you do. The officiant cleared his throat. They both laughed, then said the words, not because they believed in forever, but because they needed something to feel real again. And in that moment, standing in a gaudy Vegas chapel with her heels wobbling, and his fingers threaded through hers, Nova didn't feel homeless. She felt chosen. Back at the suite, she collapsed onto the bed with a sigh. Silk sheets, golden light, a view of the Vegas Strip that pulsed like a living thing. Wareen came in carrying room service, pancakes and strawberries at 2:30 a.m. You're feeding me? She asked, sitting up. He handed her a fork. Married couples eat together. Her eyes scanned the ring on her finger. You're not going to take this off in the morning? He shook his head. You. She hesitated. I haven't decided. Wareen sat beside her, eyes soft but unreadable. Why did you really say yes? She asked him. He set his plate down, leaned back. Because you didn't ask me who I was. You just listened. She looked at him. I've never felt more seen and more lost in the same night. Good, he said. That means we're on the same page. They didn't sleep with each other that night. Not in the way people expected. They lay side by side, still in their wedding clothes, watching the ceiling and laughing over childhood memories, broken dreams, and things they both missed. It wasn't about sex. It was about permission to be human, again. The next morning, Nova stood in front of the hotel mirror. Mascara smudged, hair undone. She looked like someone else, someone softer, someone with a ring she hadn't budgeted for. Wareen stood behind her shirtless, brushing his teeth like it was any other day. You ready to go back? He asked. She glanced at him through the mirror. Go back to what? He shrugged. Whatever's next. Nova turned to him. Are we going to talk about what we did? We got married, he said plainly. That's not a metaphor. I mean what it means. Wareen wiped his mouth with a towel. It means I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. Nova crossed her arms. You don't even know where I live. I do now, he replied. You live in my world. You just haven't realized it yet. She laughed once, dry and confused. You think I'm a story worth telling. I think you're the only real person I've met in years. She looked down. He stepped closer. Don't run, he said softly. I'm not a fantasy. Good, he said, brushing her hair back gently. I've had enough fantasies. I'm looking for something that breathes. By noon, they were on a flight back to New York. This time, no champagne, no rush of adrenaline. Just a woman with a ring she wasn't sure she deserved, and a man who looked at her like she was already home. 3 days later, Nova stood barefoot in the middle of a Manhattan penthouse that didn't feel real. Marble floors, glass walls, velvet shadows, the kind of home that looked like it belonged in a catalog, not real life, not her life. Her suitcase was a paper shopping bag with 2 changes of clothes. She didn't own a toothbrush. She didn't have a place in his closet, but the golden band on her finger said otherwise. She was now Mrs. Nova Sydney, and she couldn't breathe. "Coffee?" Waring asked from across the kitchen, voice low and casual like they were college roommates instead of accidental spouses. Nova looked over her shoulder. He stood barefoot in gray sweatpants and a black tee that stretched across his chest. No tux, no bravado, just a man making espresso like the world hadn't tilted on its axis. "You have a lot of coffee machines," she said, staring at the 3 stainless steel appliances on the counter. "I don't trust one to do it right," he replied with a shrug. Nova gave a short laugh. "That's either rich people logic or control issues." "Probably both," Waring said. She walked toward him, arms crossed. "We need to talk." He handed her a cup. "I figured that was coming. I think we should end this," she said plainly. "Define this," he replied without flinching. "This marriage," she said. "It was fun, spontaneous, maybe even therapeutic. But I can't play wife in a world I don't belong in." "You think you don't belong here?" he asked. "I know I don't." Waring took a slow sip, then set the cup down. "Let's try this again. You want an annulment?" She nodded once. He stepped forward, and then he kissed her, softly, not like Vegas, not like the bar, but like a man who was trying to stop time before it broke the moment apart. Nova didn't pull away. When he finally did, he didn't say anything, just looked at her like the answer was already written in the space between them. "I'll annul it," she whispered, breath shaky. "No," he said. "No?" I said no. She blinked. "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works," he said, stepping even closer. "I don't want out. And I don't think you do either." Nova's voice wavered. "You don't even know who I am." "I know enough," Waring said. "I know you didn't take a dime from me. I know you haven't asked for anything. I know you keep looking for exits every time someone offers you a door." Her voice cracked. "I've never had a door stay open this long." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and firm. "Then stop running." They didn't make it to the bedroom. Their clothes fell in the hallway. Jacket, dress strap, one heel kicked off with a gasp. His hands weren't rough. They were reverent, like he was touching something sacred. She moaned into his mouth as he pressed her against the wall, his body hard and unyielding, hers soft and hungry. Their breaths tangled. His mouth trailed down her throat. Her back arched into him. When he lifted her, she wrapped her legs around him like instinct. He carried her down the hallway, one room at a time, passing oil paintings, a grand piano, untouched luxury. He dropped her gently on a bed that could fit 6 people. And then he worshipped her, slowly, thoroughly, without performance. Not because she was his wife, not because she was stunning, but because he couldn't stop. Later, lying naked under sheets that smelled like him, Nova stared at the ceiling. "I shouldn't have stayed," she whispered. Waring rolled onto his side, resting a hand on her stomach. "But you did." She turned to him. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, it was quiet, heavy. "Because everyone wants something from me. Money, access, deals. You just wanted to breathe." Nova didn't know what to say, so he filled the silence. "I've had people buy planes just to sit next to me. I've had women plan pregnancies without my consent. I've had clients tattoo my initials." She blinked. "You're joking." "I'm not." "And me?" she asked. "You told me I had control issues." Nova smiled. "You do, and I liked it," he said. "That's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That I didn't want to wake up next to anyone else." The next morning, she walked into the kitchen wrapped in one of his button-down shirts. He looked up from his laptop. "You make it a habit to wear my clothes?" he asked. "I have none," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "That's easy to fix." "No, don't." "Don't what?" "Buy me things. Fix me. Make me part of your decor." Waring stood slowly. Walked over. "You think that's what I'm doing?" "I don't know what you're doing." He leaned in, mouth close to her ear. "I'm letting you take up space." She shivered. And for the first time, she believed him. Nova had spent her entire adult life trying not to need anyone. Now she was waking up in a penthouse bed, wrapped in 500 thread, count sheets and a man whose touch made her forget how to breathe. But as the light from the tall windows spilled across the room, reality returned like a slap to the chest. This wasn't a fantasy. This wasn't sustainable. And that man, Warren Sidney, was still very much her husband. Her stomach clenched as she sat up, pulling the sheet over her chest. Her clothes were in a pile at the foot of the bed. His black shirt was draped over a chair. A red mark lingered on her collarbone. His mouth had left it there the night before. She glanced to her left. Warren stood by the window, shirtless, phone in hand, voice low as he conducted business without skipping a beat. Yes, move the launch up a week. I'll back the risk. He turned just as he ended the call, and his eyes landed on her like they'd been searching. Morning, he said. Morning, she replied, voice dry. You do billion-dollar deals half naked? He smiled. Only when the company's worth it. Nova dropped her gaze, unable to hold the weight of his charm. We need to talk, she said, wrapping the sheet tighter. We did talk, he answered, walking toward her. You said you'd leave. I said no. Right, she scoffed. That's not how grown-ups settle things. I wasn't being immature, he said. I was being clear. You can't just tell me I belong here. I'm not telling you, Warren said, now standing at the foot of the bed. I'm showing you. He crawled back onto the bed, slow and deliberate. She pulled away. Don't. He froze. Why not? Because I'll forget again. He tilted his head. Forget what? That this isn't mine. This isn't real. He leaned closer. Last night felt real to me. She stared at him. You don't know anything about me. I know you wore the same heels 2 nights in a row because they're your only pair. I know you pretend like nothing touches you, but you cried in your sleep last night. Her throat tightened. I didn't cry. You whispered your brother's name, twice. Nova blinked, startled. She looked away. Warren exhaled and reached for her hand. I didn't marry you for a headline, he said. And I didn't keep you here for pity. Then why? Because for the first time in a long time, I don't feel alone when I wake up. Nova swallowed. His hand slid along her cheek. Let me make you breakfast. I don't want breakfast. Then let me make you stay. She shook her head. But when he leaned in, when his lips brushed hers, her hand betrayed her, curling into his chest. Warren. I mean it, Nova. Stay. Her resolve melted between his hands. The kitchen smelled like eggs and burnt toast. He couldn't cook, clearly, but he was trying. Nova sat on a high stool, wearing his hoodie now, watching him flip something unidentifiable in the pan. This is terrifying, she murmured. Confidence, he said without looking. I'm a man of vision. You're going to burn your vision. He turned and grinned. You're a guest in my house. Show some respect. I'm your wife, remember? He paused, then turned back to the pan. You said it, not me. She rolled her eyes and bit her lip to hide the smirk. Later, Nova stood at the edge of the penthouse balcony, hair swept by the wind, coffee in hand. Warren joined her, resting his forearms on the glass railing. Tell me something true, he said. She didn't answer right away. Then, I lost everything because I told the truth. I exposed my firm's internal fraud to the regulators. They twisted it, claimed I hacked into confidential data. They blacklisted me. My reputation didn't matter. Nobody stood by me, not even my closest friends. Warren didn't interrupt. I went from designer suits to digging through my own trash for old resume copies. He waited. I was proud. I still am. But pride doesn't keep you warm. He nodded slowly. I respect that. You still want me to stay? She asked. He faced her fully. I want you to decide, not escape. She sipped her coffee. I'll stay. For now. His eyes softened. That's all I needed. That night they didn't touch. They lay side by side again, this time facing each other, words flowing between them like a current. Nova spoke of her brother, of what it meant to lose him. Warren spoke of his mother, of growing up alone in a household full of everything except love. By midnight, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just understood. And right before sleep claimed her, she whispered something so small. He almost missed it, thank you, for not letting me disappear. The first time Nova opened the doors to the penthouse's second floor, she froze. It wasn't the walk-in closet bigger than her old apartment, or the in-wall espresso station that remembered Warren's exact preferences. It was the portrait on the far wall, a woman, tall and elegant, standing in front of a piano. She had the same eyes as Warren. That's your mother, Nova said without turning. Warren looked up from his tablet where he sat on the edge of the bed. Yeah, she was beautiful. She was also brilliant, taught me finance with Monopoly, taught me silence was power. Nova glanced back. Did she teach you how to shut people out too? Maureen didn't answer. She walked toward the painting slowly. I've been living here for days now, but I still feel like a tourist. That's because you're too polite to take up space, he replied. I'm not trying to offend the museum, she said, arms folding. Maureen stood. This isn't a museum. It's a house. No, it's your house, your rules, your kingdom. I'm just crashing in the guest room until I figure out how to disappear again. You're not a guest. You keep saying that because it's true. Then where's my toothbrush, Maureen? He blinked. My closet? She pressed. My side of the bed? My picture on your wall? She wasn't yelling, but the heat in her voice was undeniable. You say I belong here, but everything about this place reminds me I don't. Maureen exhaled, jaw clenched. He walked past her, straight into the closet. Seconds later, he returned with a black card in his hand. What's that? A key to the suite next door. It's yours. Nova stared. That suite's empty, he said. Design it, paint it, burn it and rebuild it. Make it yours. Do whatever you want. She looked at the card, then at him. I'm not a project. You're not. But you are my wife. Her breath caught. He stepped closer. If you want toothbrushes, I'll buy 100. If you want your own space, you'll have it. But don't confuse my silence with indifference. She folded her arms tighter. So, what are we, Maureen? He studied her. Married, complicated, figuring it out. I want an identity, not a label. Then stop asking for permission and start taking up space. Hours later, she stood in the center of the suite next door. It was cold, bare, white walls, empty closet, a mattress still in its plastic cover. Nova sat cross-legged on the floor and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she had a room with a lock, and no one telling her to leave. That night, Maureen didn't join her. He stayed in the master suite, giving her space. But just past midnight, a knock came. Nova opened the door in his hoodie and nothing else. Maureen stood in joggers, barefoot, holding a small box. For you, she opened it. Inside was a soft leather wallet with a new ID card. Her name, her photo, her face clear and sharp, a Sydney Tower access badge. You gave me credentials, she said quietly. You said you wanted to belong. She looked up at him, eyes glassy. You're impossible. I'm consistent. You're stubborn. I'm certain. She laughed, wiped a tear away, and stepped aside to let him in. They didn't make love that night. They talked. On the mattress without sheets, in a room without furniture. Just two people, finally letting silence be safe. I hated myself when the headlines hit, Nova admitted. They called me a liar, a thief. One article said I'd seduced my way into corporate access. I read that, Maureen said. She looked at him. You did? I also read your deposition, the truth buried on page 12. You did background on me. I married you. She smiled. Right. I wanted to know who you were, not just who the media said you were. And I liked what I found. In the morning, she woke up to music. Soft jazz echoing from the main suite. She followed the sound barefoot, finding Maureen at the grand piano. Shirtless again, he played with one hand, a coffee cup in the other. Nova leaned against the wall. You play? He glanced over. Badly. She walked closer, but passionately. He paused. I used to play for my mom. Before she got sick. Nova sat beside him. Why did you stop? She died. I'm sorry. He looked at her. You keep saying sorry for things you didn't cause. Habit. Break it. She didn't argue. Instead, she reached out and played a single note beside his. Then another, and another. Soon, 4 hands played nothing coherent, but something that felt like peace. By that afternoon, Nova had unpacked her 2 outfits into the closet, ordered herself a toothbrush, wrote her name on a sticky note, and posted it on the fridge. Not much, but it was hers. And when Maureen walked in and saw it, he didn't say anything. He just smiled, like he'd been waiting for her to claim something all along. It started with a cup of tea and a flash of skin. Nova was coming down the hallway in one of his oversized shirts, still barefoot, her curls pinned up and a mug in hand. The hallway lights glowed soft against her skin, making her look like a quiet storm that hadn't decided if it would pass or stay. Maureen stepped out of the guest bedroom, buttoning his cuffs. He froze. So did she. Neither moved for a few seconds. Then he spoke, voice calm, deep. "Didn't mean to startle you." "I wasn't startled," she replied, lowering the mug just slightly. "Is that my mug?" She glanced down. "You own everything in this place. It's all your mug." He smirked. "You're not wrong." Her eyes drifted down to the way his shirt hugged his chest, and her breath caught before she could stop it. He noticed. Maureen stepped closer, slowly, not with arrogance, with intent. Nova didn't move back, didn't blink, just stared at him. He reached for the mug, his fingers brushing hers. "Chamomile?" he asked. "Peppermint," she said softly. He didn't take the mug. He took her waist. In one slow, silent motion, his other hand moved to the back of her neck. His mouth hovered inches from hers. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. Nova's pulse pounded. Her lips parted. She didn't say a word. His mouth crushed hers. The mug hit the floor, forgotten. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't planned. But it wasn't careless either. It was fire, contained only by the walls that had been waiting to see this happen since the day she walked in. He pinned her against the wall, kissing her like he was starved. Her legs parted instinctively, and he slipped between them, pressing every inch of his body into hers. Her shirt rode up. His hands explored. Her nails dug into his shoulders. "Maureen," she gasped. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "You're not leaving." She blinked. "You're saying that like I just asked to." "You've been saying it since the night we met," he whispered, voice rough with need. She kissed him again. This time, hard, urgent, desperate. He lifted her effortlessly, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. Their mouths never stopped moving. He carried her down the hall, bumping into walls, knocking a photo frame loose. They didn't care. They didn't make it to the bed. The hallway rug became their battlefield. He laid her down on it, stripped her slowly this time, savoring every reaction. Her whimper when he kissed below her ear. Her arch when his mouth found her breast. She pulled his shirt over his head, eyes locking with his as her hands slid over his chest. "You don't look like a man who plays it safe," she whispered. "I don't," he said, sliding between her thighs. He paused, just for a second. "Tell me again," he said. "What?" "That you're not going anywhere." She reached up, wrapped her arms around his neck, and pulled him in close. "I'm right here," she whispered, and then he took her. Every thrust was a vow unspoken. Every moan was a confession. They moved like they knew this wouldn't end with clothes back on and cold coffee. Like they needed this to mean something. And it did. Later she lay tangled beneath him, skin damp, heart pounding. His hand rested on her stomach, fingers splayed. Her eyes blinked slowly, still catching up to the gravity of what just happened. He turned his head, lips brushing her shoulder. "You feel like home," he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. The next morning was silent, but not cold. She woke in his bed, not hers. His arm was around her waist, anchoring her in place. She didn't move for a long time. Didn't want to. Eventually, she rolled out gently and padded into the kitchen. She poured herself coffee, now comfortably claiming the mug as her own. He walked in behind her a few minutes later, hair tousled, sweatpants low on his hips. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. Depends," he said. "You staying today?" Nova glanced at him over her shoulder. "You always ask questions you already know the answer to. Only when the answer makes me feel better." She handed him a mug. "Then yeah, I'm staying." By the time the sun set, she had unpacked into the main suite, moved her things, minimal as they were, into his room, their room. The hallway rug remained slightly crooked, one corner flipped up. She left it that way. A reminder that sometimes the mess was worth it. Nova sat on the marble ledge of the penthouse terrace, legs tucked beneath her, the city stretching out in every direction. Lights blinked like stars scattered across steel towers. But her chest ached with something she couldn't name. Maureen stepped outside with 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. She took it without a word. They sipped in silence for a moment. Then she spoke. "We need boundaries." He turned to her. "That sounds like a prelude to bad news." "No," she said. "It's a prelude to survival." He waited. "Let's make a deal," she said. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of what? Living together, exploring, whatever this is. No lawyers, no annulments, no press, no pressure. "And after 6 weeks?" he asked. "We go our separate ways if it doesn't work." Waring stared at her, unreadable. "You think 6 weeks is enough to test a marriage?" "I think it's the only way I'll stay without panicking." He took another sip of wine, then nodded. "Fine. 6 weeks." She raised her glass. "No strings, no secrets," he countered. "No pretending," she added. He tapped his glass against hers. "Deal." Day 1 was quiet. Nova claimed the guest closet, organized it with military precision, bought 3 new blouses and a pair of heels online using her own card, not his. Waring didn't offer to help, didn't interfere. He just watched, from a respectful distance. Day 5, things shifted. They were walking through Central Park. No security, no assistance, just coffee and cold wind. "You know you're the first person to say no to me in a long time?" Waring said. "Because you only surround yourself with yes men." He smiled. "You're not wrong." She sipped her coffee. "Do you even like the people you work with?" "I respect them." "That's not the same." "I know." They walked a little further. "You're also the first woman who never asked what I could buy her," he added. Nova shrugged. "I've seen the receipts. I'm not impressed." He chuckled, and she smiled. Day 10, she caught him reading her journal. She walked in from the shower, towel on her head, and found him frozen, one page halfway turned. She stopped cold. "Waring." He looked up. Guilty. She walked over and snatched the book. "Seriously? I wasn't trying to invade your privacy," he said quickly. "It fell, and you just kept reading?" He stepped back. "I'm sorry." Nova's jaw clenched. "What did you read?" He hesitated. "That you still don't believe this is real," she said. "Nothing." Waring moved closer. "I'm not mad. I wish you'd told me." She held the journal against her chest. "I'm not good at trust." "I'm not good at asking for it," he replied. She looked at him, tears prickling. "Then maybe we're both out of our depth." "Maybe," he said softly. "But I'd rather be drowning with you than swimming alone." She blinked. Once, then set the journal aside. "I forgive you," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms. Day 16, she cooked for him. Not because he asked, not because she was trying to prove anything, because she needed to feel useful. She burned the rice, oversalted the salmon, dropped a glass and sliced her finger. He came rushing in with a bandage. "I was trying to impress you," she muttered, embarrassed. He wrapped her hand gently. "You did? I nearly poisoned you." "You cooked," he said. "That's impressive enough." She looked at him. "I'm used to being the capable one." "You still are." He kissed her knuckles, and her defenses cracked a little more. Day 21, she dreamed about her brother. Woke up crying, chest heaving in the dark. Waring sat up instantly. "Nova, what is it?" She shook her head, breath shaky. He pulled her into his lap, arms tight. "I miss him," she whispered. "He used to tell me I could fix anything, that I was the one thing he wasn't afraid to believe in." Waring rested his chin on her shoulder. He was right. She wept quietly in his arms, and he never let go. By day 25, their rules blurred. She wore his robe every morning. He asked her opinion on merger deals. They laughed over old sitcom reruns and made breakfast together like they'd been married for years. But Nova felt the clock ticking. 6 weeks, and she still wasn't sure if she wanted it to end or last forever. One evening, as they were folding laundry, yes, billionaires do laundry when they want to feel normal, Waring looked at her. "Do you think we made a mistake?" She paused. "By getting married? By stopping time with a deadline?" Nova folded a shirt. "Deadlines give clarity, or they create illusions," he said. She met his eyes. "What are we doing, Waring?" He walked over, took the shirt from her hand, set it aside, then kissed her. Not because of timing, not because of heat, because he couldn't hold back the truth anymore. It started with a piano bench. Nova hadn't meant to touch anything. She was just cleaning up coffee cups after a quiet morning in the living room. But as she passed by the grand piano, something caught her eye. A leather-bound notebook, edges worn, spine softened by time. She wasn't snooping. Just curious. She opened it slowly. Inside were pages and pages of handwritten entries, elegant cursive, dated in the early 2000s. One line repeated in different variations. Maureen doesn't speak much, but he feels deeply. I hope the world never teaches him to bury that heart. Nova's chest tightened. It was his mother's journal. She read further. He smiled today. That's rare. Said he liked the sound of my piano more than the market bells. I pray he always keeps something sacred. She read until the last line on the open page. If you're reading this, son, don't forget your softness. It's not a flaw, it's your gift. She didn't hear him come in. Did you read it all? He asked, voice clipped. Nova jumped, slamming the book shut and turning. Waring stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. I didn't mean to, but you did. Her throat went dry. It was open. You still had a choice. She placed the journal down gently. I'm sorry. He didn't move, didn't blink. Why are you angry? She asked. Because I saw her? Or because I saw you? Waring's jaw clenched. Some things aren't meant to be shared. She stepped toward him, slow. Careful. Do you think I see less of you now? I think you see too much. Nova tilted her head. You think you're hard to love? I know I am. You think I'm still here because I'm impressed by the man with the penthouse? I don't know why you're still here. She walked to him, placed her hand on his chest. I'm here, she whispered, because I saw the pain before the legacy. He looked away. She placed her palm against his cheek. I saw you. Their kiss was not soft this time. It was need. It was release. It was everything they hadn't said in 2.5 weeks of pretending not to be drowning in each other. Waring backed her into the piano bench. Buttons popped. Fingers fumbled. He sat, pulled her onto his lap. The piano gave off a scattered series of broken notes as her knees knocked the keys. He didn't care. Neither did she. Their bodies moved like muscle memory, frantic, precise, unstoppable. Her dress pooled at her waist. His hands roamed like he owned her skin. Waring, she gasped. He silenced her with a kiss. The bench creaked beneath them. He slid inside her in one powerful thrust, and she clung to him, breath caught, moans swallowed by his mouth. The world narrowed to heat, to skin, to the gasps between them. When it ended, they were both breathless, forehead to forehead. I don't want to be angry, he whispered. Then don't, she replied. I don't want to be afraid. Then stay. Later that night, Nova walked through the penthouse barefoot, trailing her fingers along the cool stone countertops. She found herself in the kitchen, sipping water and staring out at the city. Waring entered silently, wearing only lounge pants, damp towel around his shoulders. You okay? He asked. I think I fell in love with the boy in those pages, she murmured. Waring leaned against the counter. He doesn't exist anymore. You're wrong. He looked at her. You still write checks to his old school, she continued. Still donate under your mother's name. Still visit the neighborhood you started in. That boy never left. He just built walls around himself. And you, she set her glass down. I didn't have walls. I had escape plans. He chuckled softly. You still do. She nodded. But I didn't use them this time. He walked over, stood behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. They stood there for a long time, saying nothing, letting the ice between them melt, slowly. By the end of the 3rd week, they weren't counting days anymore. They were just being. She moved freely through the space now, her toothbrush in the bathroom, her scarf on the coat rack, her favorite mug sitting proudly on the counter. He stopped scheduling late meetings. She stopped apologizing for staying. One morning, she came out of the shower in his robe, hair still wet. He was in bed, working on his laptop. You're watching our stock? Always, he said. She walked over, kissed his cheek and said, Close it. He looked up, curious. Why? Because today, we're not investors. We're just us. He stared at her. They didn't leave the apartment that day. They danced barefoot in the kitchen, took bubble baths with jazz in the background, ate fruit off each other's fingers, made love with no rush and no rules. And when the sun went down, Nova whispered, I think I stopped fearing tomorrow. Waring smiled, tracing a finger down her spine. Then maybe, he said, we're finally getting somewhere. By the 4th week, the air between them had changed. It wasn't lust anymore. It wasn't survival. It was something that wrapped itself around their routines, their silences, their glances across the breakfast table. Something heavier, something terrifyingly tender. Nova noticed it first when she found herself reaching for his hand without thinking. At a dinner with his board members, he brushed his fingers along her lower back, and her entire body reacted, not with shock, but with belonging. Afterward, in the elevator, she didn't pull away. "I think I'm forgetting the 6-week rule," she whispered against his chest. Warren leaned in, kissed her forehead, and murmured, "Good." They went to the farmer's market that weekend. Hoodies, sunglasses, no staff. He held a tote bag. She picked the apples. "You always look like you're calculating risk in your head," she teased as he examined a tomato. "I am," he replied. "What if this turns out mushy?" Nova laughed. The vendor stared, blinking twice. "Wait, are you?" Warren didn't flinch. "We're just here for produce." Nova leaned in and whispered, "So much for anonymity." Warren smirked. "They'll forget us in 2 minutes." They didn't. Photos surfaced on social media within hours. Warren Sydney, mystery woman. Hand, holding in Brooklyn. The press didn't know her name, but they were hungry to find it. That night, Nova sat curled on the couch, scrolling her phone with a frown. Warren entered with a bowl of strawberries. "I told you not to look. They called me a civilian conquest." He set the bowl down. "That's generous. I've seen worse." She put the phone down. "You're not worried?" "No. You don't think it'll hurt your image?" "I don't need an image," he said. "I need peace." Nova stared at him. "And me?" "You're not noise," he said. "You're the quiet after the chaos." Her throat tightened. "What if this gets worse?" "It will." She looked away. "But so will we," he added, "if we stay honest." The next morning she woke up to find the article updated. They'd identified her. Name, age, former employer, alleged scandal, whistleblower or seductress. The headline read. She stared at the screen, numb. Warren came up behind her, kissed her shoulder, and read the headline aloud. Then he said, "You should call a press conference." She turned. "What?" "You should own it." "I'm not ready." "You're already in it," he said. "You may as well tell your version." Nova stood, pacing. "You think they'll believe me?" "I do. I'm not you, Warren. I don't have the armor." He walked to her, placed his hand on her heart. "Yes, you do. You've had it longer than me." They didn't argue about it again. He let her sit with the fear. Let her cry into his shirt that night. Let her hold the silence. The next morning, she asked him to book the press room at Sydney Tower. 3 days later, she stood before a wall of cameras. Hair pulled back, black pantsuit, bare makeup, no jewelry. Warren stood in the shadows, out of frame, but close enough to feel. Nova adjusted the mic. "My name is Nova Ray Willoughby. I was once a respected financial analyst until telling the truth made me a liability. I was fired, slandered, and blacklisted. I was not a thief. I was a woman who refused to compromise her ethics." She paused. "I married a man I barely knew because I was tired of pretending. But that decision, rash as it was, brought me back to the one thing I lost, my voice." Reporters shouted questions. Nova didn't flinch. She smiled. "That's all I came to say," and walked off. Back at the penthouse, Warren popped a bottle of champagne. Nova raised a brow. "That's premature. You just burned the internet down." "I just told the truth." "Exactly," he said, handing her a glass. They clinked glasses. "Did I embarrass you?" she asked. He took a sip. "You made me proud." Later that night, as they lay in bed, Nova turned to him. "You ever think about what would have happened if we didn't meet that night?" "I try not to," he said. "Why?" "Because it makes everything else feel hollow." Nova pressed her palm to his chest. "I feel like I can finally breathe." He covered her hand with his. Then, "Stay. I already did." On the 42nd day, they forgot the clock entirely. No reminders, no threats of endings. Just morning coffee, shared laughter, quiet touches. The kind of normal that people like them weren't supposed to have. But they did, and they built it together. Nova's photo was everywhere before breakfast. Not a selfie, not a posed portrait. Just her, standing next to Warren at a fruit stall, holding a bunch of bananas and laughing at something he'd whispered. The image was grainy, but her smile was clear. So was the headline, Sydney's secret marriage to mystery woman exposed. Below it, a series of harsh titles followed like claws scraping her chest. From soup kitchen to penthouse? Gold digger or lost heiress? Sleeping her way into the boardroom? Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Maureen stood behind her at the breakfast bar, sipping espresso like this was weather. Inconvenient, predictable, passing. Nova, however, sat frozen. They found everything, she said, voice low. I figured they would. My job history, my shelter intake form, even my eviction record. Maureen set the cup down. None of that changes who you are. Nova looked up at him, eyes glassy. But it changes how they see me. He didn't blink. Then let them look. The calls kept coming. Clients, investors, board members. Maureen answered none of them. But he read the headlines out loud at random, like reading jokes off a bad menu. Mystery wife may have secret baby. Did she drug the billionaire? Scandal or strategy? Nova sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. This isn't funny. I know. Then why are you so calm? Because I've seen worse. She turned to him. And what if I haven't? Maureen walked over, crouched down in front of her. You don't have to be ready. She swallowed hard. I didn't want to be a headline. I wanted to be human again. You are? No, I'm a tabloid punchline. He cupped her face. You're the woman I married. That's all I care about. But it wasn't all the world cared about. Within 24 hours, every major business outlet picked it up. The Wall Street Tribune ran a front-page article. Maureen Sydney's mysterious bride once fired for breach of trust. Nova didn't read the body of the article, just the headline. That was enough. She locked herself in the guest suite for a full day. Didn't eat, didn't cry, didn't speak. Maureen stood outside the door twice, knocking gently. No answer. He didn't push. He just waited. Late that night she came out, eyes red, face pale. Maureen sat at the piano bench in the dark, fingers tapping keys absent-mindedly. Nova walked in slowly, stood beside him. You didn't hide me. He looked up. You could have lied, could have denied we were married. You didn't. I won't ever deny you, he said softly. Her throat tightened. Why? Because I don't want a life that doesn't include you. She sat beside him. He looked at her again. You don't owe me anything, Maureen. I owe myself the truth, he replied. And what is that? That I'd rather burn the whole reputation to the ground than lose the one person who reminds me I'm not a machine. Nova's lip trembled. And then, quietly, he dropped to his knees. Not performatively, not for show. Just him, vulnerable, raw. He took her hand and kissed her bare knee. You belong here, he whispered. Not because I married you, but because I see who you are. In that moment, something shifted. The world still roared. But inside that room, there was silence. Not emptiness. Peace. The next morning, Nova woke up to a press statement Maureen had sent without telling her. To whom it may concern, I, Maureen Sydney, confirm my marriage to Nova Willoughby. She is not a secret. She is not a scandal. She is not a mistake. She is the most honest soul I've ever met. I will not answer further questions, but I will stand beside her for as long as she'll allow me to. The end. No explanations. No apologies. Just conviction. Nova reread it 5 times. Then she closed the laptop, walked into the master bedroom, and kissed him breathless. No words. No warning. Just truth. That afternoon, she deleted her old resume, the one she kept re-editing as if rewriting history would erase the pain. Then she opened a fresh document. At the top she wrote one sentence, I am not who they say I am. The storm outside matched the one in Nova's chest. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, arms folded tight, watching. Raindrops raced down the glass like they knew how to run better than she did. Behind her, Maureen stood with his back against the bedroom door freshly. Out of the shower, towel over one shoulder, silence pressing in. He hadn't said a word since she came in. Finally she turned. You don't owe me a life, Maureen. He met her eyes. I know. She stepped forward, arms still crossed like they were holding her together. I don't want to be your rescue story, your redemption arc. You're not. Then what am I? She asked. Be honest. Maureen pushed off the door and walked to her slowly, bare feet silent on the hardwood. You're the only part of my life I didn't strategize. Nova blinked. I didn't build you, didn't earn you, didn't even see you coming, he said. But now that you're here, I can't unsee you. She turned away. I'm scared I'll disappoint you. He stepped closer. I'm scared you'll leave before I get to love you the way you deserve. Nova's breath hitched. She turned around again, slower this time. Their eyes locked. I don't need saving, she said. I know, and I don't need your money. You've made that very clear, and I don't want to owe you. He cut her off by kissing her. Not hungrily, not with heat, but with stillness. His lips pressed to hers like a promise, not to fix her, but to stay with her. When they pulled apart, his voice dropped to a murmur. I don't want to save you, Nova. I want to stand beside you. She closed her eyes. He rested his forehead against hers. You belong here, he whispered again. She whispered back, then show me. They didn't make love in the bed that night. They made it on the floor. The soft rug cushioned their backs as their clothes came off slowly, breath by breath, layer by layer. His hands moved gently. His kisses lingered longer. Her moans were softer. Her eyes stayed open. For once, it wasn't a firestorm. It was a quiet burn. She traced every inch of him, like she was trying to memorize what it felt like to be wanted and not used. He worshipped her body like he'd studied it in every lifetime before this one. And when he entered her, it felt like returning, not taking. Look at me, he whispered. She did. I need you to know, he said between strokes. This isn't a transaction. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. It's not a favor. She gasped, gripping his shoulders. It's not a debt. Then he stilled inside her, holding her there, close, breathing, trembling. It's just us. And with her legs wrapped around him and her body trembling under his, Nova felt something she hadn't in years. Safe. In this very moment, love is not just a word. It's a rhythm, a twilight glow that binds us all. If this journey already speaks to your heart, pause for a second. Subscribe and like this video. Let the world know you feel it too. Tell me in the comments, what's your idea of true love under twilight skies? Every response lights up our community, and your story matters here. Share this with someone who still believes in love's magic. Later, wrapped in his arms, she whispered, What if I fail again? Maureen kissed her shoulder. Then we'll start again. In the morning, they had breakfast in bed. No phones, no meetings, just eggs and orange juice and soft jazz humming from the speakers. Nova leaned back against the headboard, legs tangled with his. Can I ask you something? She said. Maureen sipped his coffee. Anything. If we weren't married, would you have still chosen me? He set the cup down, turned toward her fully. I didn't marry you because I had to. I know, but I married you because you made me feel human, and every day since then, you've reminded me that I want more than power. I want connection. Nova's eyes searched his. And the headlines? He shrugged. Let them come. She smiled. You're reckless. No, I'm in love. The room went still. She didn't blink. Neither did he. Then, quietly, she said, Say it again. Maureen leaned in and brushed his lips over hers. I'm in love with you. And for once, Nova didn't hesitate. I love you too. That night, as rain turned to fog and the city settled beneath them, Nova sat with her laptop, a blank document glowing. She typed slowly, I am Nova Ray Willoughby, and I am not a footnote in someone else's story. I'm the author of my own. The tension didn't creep in. It crashed. It started with a missed dinner. Nova had planned it, cooked even, which was rare. But Maureen texted at 6:52 p.m., held up at Ritz-Carlton, bored dinner, back late. She stared at the screen for a full minute. The Ritz-Carlton. That wasn't just any bored dinner. That was the hotel his ex frequented. The same woman the media kept linking to him, speculating about unfinished business and what-ifs. Nova tried to dismiss it, but the doubt crawled. By 10:30 p.m., she was pacing the suite barefoot, in the same dress she'd cooked in. By 11:12, she called. No answer. By midnight, she had taken off the dress, the earrings, and the part of herself that still tried to play it cool. He came in at 12:21 a.m. Nova was sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting. Maureen closed the door softly. You didn't have to wait up. I did. He slipped out of his blazer. It was just dinner. She stood slowly. With your ex? She was there, yes. Nova folded her arms. And you couldn't pick up your phone? I didn't want to argue over nothing. Her voice dropped. It's not nothing to me. Wareen exhaled hard. I didn't cheat. I didn't flirt. I didn't even sit beside her. You disappeared, Wareen. For 3 hours. That's all it takes for me to remember what it feels like to be abandoned. That hit harder than he expected. Nova, you want me to believe this is different? Then don't act like every other man who made me feel replaceable. I didn't do anything wrong, he said, voice firm now. You didn't try to do anything right. Silence. Thick. Cold. Then she moved to walk past him. He caught her wrist. Don't walk away. She pulled back. Then don't make me feel like I have to. Their breaths were sharp. Their eyes locked. And just like that, the argument turned. She kissed him first. Angry, bruising. He kissed her back harder. Clothes came off in pieces, buttons popped, a zipper tore. They slammed into the bedroom wall, mouths colliding, hands gripping, nails digging. This doesn't fix anything, she gasped. I know, he growled, lifting her with both arms. He carried her across the room and tossed her onto the bed like a dare. She pulled him down by the waistband, voice low and sharp. Don't be gentle. Wasn't planning to. He entered her with force, and she moaned so loud it rattled her chest. They moved fast, raw, wild, his hands on her hips, her legs locked around his back. They weren't making love. They were making noise. Pain, frustration, desire, need. He grabbed her wrists and pinned them above her head. Her eyes flared. You mad? No, he said. Desperate. He moved inside her like he was chasing something. She arched into him like she was trying to hold it still. Their rhythm became ruthless. Her skin flushed. His voice cracked. And when they both shattered, it was loud. Unapologetic. They lay there afterward in silence, still breathing hard, still sweating. But the anger had broken. Wareen finally spoke. I should have called. Nova turned her head, eyes soft now. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. He rolled onto his side, stroked her cheek. You're not replaceable. I know. He kissed her again, slow this time. We good? He asked. We're better, she whispered. The next day, neither of them talked about it. They moved through the apartment like people who had survived a storm, quiet but close, slightly shaken but not broken. Nova made coffee. Wareen read the paper. She slid a croissant onto his plate. He reached for her hand. No words needed. Later that evening, he came up behind her in the kitchen, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. Don't ever think I'd choose someone else, he said. Nova leaned back into him. I don't want to be chosen by default. You're not. She turned, wrapped her arms around his neck. I want to be chosen every day. Then I'll wake up every morning and do it again, Wareen said. And for the first time since the headlines began, Nova believed him. That night, she added a new note to her journal. We didn't fall apart. We fell into the truth. The envelope was matte black. No return address. Just her name in silver foil, Nova Ray Willoughby. It was waiting on the kitchen island when she came in from her morning walk. She picked it up slowly, cautious, curious. Inside, there was no letter, no explanation, just a document, a notarized deed. She read the bolded line twice. Ownership transfer, Queen's First Equity Bank sole executive authority, Nova Ray Willoughby. Her mouth went dry. What is this? She asked aloud, though she already knew. Wareen stepped out from the hallway, tie half done, jacket slung over his shoulder. I meant to be here before you found it. She held up the paper like it was fire. You bought me a bank? I gave you back your seat, he said calmly. You can't just... I can, he said, walking over, and I did. Nova set the document down hard. You're not hearing me. I don't want a trophy. I don't want a gift. This isn't a gift. You just handed me a corporation. No, he said, voice firm now. I handed you control. She blinked. He stepped closer, pulling the tie loose again. You lost everything because you did the right thing. I've been in rooms where men who caused market crashes were given second chances. You deserve your first. Nova stared at him. You don't even know if I can still do this. You're the smartest analyst I've ever met. You rebuilt yourself with nothing but grit and borrowed shoes. You don't need validation. You need tools. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want this to be charity. It's not. Then what is it? It's me making space for you to stand beside me, not behind. She covered her face with both hands. Maureen didn't touch her. He waited. When she looked back up, voice cracking, she asked, "Why me?" "Because I don't want to build kingdoms with anyone else." She didn't sign the deed that day. She let it sit on the nightstand for 3 days, unopened. But every time she passed it, her pulse kicked. Because he hadn't handed it to her in a bow. He hadn't asked for anything in return. He didn't even bring it up again. He just moved through their life, quiet, consistent, always looking at her like she belonged in every room he entered. On the 4th morning, she walked into the office at Sydney Tower with a pen in hand. His assistant blinked. "Miss Willoughby?" "I'm here to see the founder," she said. And this time, I'm not sitting in the waiting area. He was on a call when she stepped in. She didn't wait for him to hang up. She set the signed document on his desk and said one word, "Done." Maureen looked at it, then up at her. "You're really doing this?" "I'm not hiding anymore." He stood, walked around the desk, and pulled her into a hug. Not tight, not passionate, just full of respect. That night, she cooked again. Only this time he helped. He chopped, she stirred. They danced while the pasta boiled. "You're not going to regret this?" he asked, twirling her under his arm. "I've regretted every time I played small. I'm done with that," she said. "Then you're officially the baddest CEO I know." "Oh, I plan to be ruthless." She grinned. He leaned in. "Marry me again." She blinked. "What?" "Marry me again. For real. No jet fuel, no impulsive vows. Just you, me, and the choice to start something permanent." Nova's chest tightened. "You still refusing to let me leave?" "I'll keep refusing," he said, "for the rest of my life." She didn't answer right away. But that night she pulled out a journal and wrote 3 words under the date. "I said yes." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Nova stepped onto the 28th floor of Queen's First Equity Bank. Her bank. The staff didn't recognize her at first. Why would they? She wasn't dressed in corporate armor. No flashy heels. No sharp-shouldered blazers. She wore tailored pants, a soft navy blouse, and a calm face that didn't beg for attention. But her presence shifted the air. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, polite but distant. Nova smiled, calm. "Yes. I'm here for the 9 a.m. executive briefing." "I'm sorry," the woman replied. "That's reserved for—" "I know," Nova said, pulling her new badge from her bag and sliding it across the desk. The receptionist's eyes scanned it, then widened. Oh. By the time she walked into the boardroom, conversations stopped. Half a dozen executives stared at her, confused. One man stood up slowly, blinking. I didn't know we had a new hire." "You don't," Nova said, placing her tote on the table. "I'm sorry, who?" "I'm Nova Willoughby," she said, calm but firm. "And as of this week, I'm the sole executive authority over Queen's First." A hush fell. Another man, gray-haired, smug, stood up with forced courtesy. "You're the woman from the Sydney headlines?" "Yes," she said, meeting his gaze. "That headline was 2 weeks ago. This one will be about numbers." He blinked. "You've never run a bank." She smiled tightly. "And yet, here I am." She didn't try to prove herself that day. She listened, took notes, watched every reaction in the room, especially the discomfort. She'd seen this before. Men confused that confidence could come wrapped in softness and scars. They underestimated her, which meant they'd never see her coming. Later that afternoon, she walked through the glass doors of her corner office. It wasn't large, not extravagant, but it had her name on the frosted glass. She closed the door, took a breath, and sank into the chair. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from the weight of becoming. That night, she sat across from Maureen at their dining table. He was quiet, letting her talk through every awkward moment, every microaggression, every victory. "I don't need to be liked," she said. "But I do need to be listened to." "You will be," Maureen replied. "Eventually, or I'll replace them." He grinned. "There's the woman I married by accident and fell for on purpose." Nova leaned over the table. "Still want to marry me again?" "More than ever." The next morning, headlines shifted. "Whistleblower to CEO, Nova Willoughby takes over former community bank. Sydney's wife quietly builds her own empire. Power couple? She's not just the wife anymore. Nova didn't react. She had too many meetings scheduled, too many ideas, too many things to rebuild. At the end of the week, she gathered the entire leadership team in the boardroom. "You've all read the headlines," she said, arms crossed. "Now read this." She passed around packets, her new proposal for community-centered lending, fair access underwriting, and profit models that didn't rely on kicking the ladder down after climbing it. One man scoffed. "This isn't traditional finance." "That's the point," Nova said. "We're not here to preserve the same systems that crushed people like me." Another woman, mid-40s, cautious, raised a hand. "Do you expect resistance?" Nova nodded. "I expect it. I'm prepared for it. What I won't accept is complacency." Silence, then slow nods around the table. By the end of the month, Nova had hired 5 new department heads, 2 of them women who had been blacklisted after speaking out at previous firms. She didn't ask for loyalty. She asked for integrity. And when she walked the floor, people didn't look away. They looked up. Because the woman on the 28th floor was no longer a whisper behind a man. She was the voice at the front of the room. It wasn't about seduction anymore. It wasn't about need. That night, as the city quieted and the sky wrapped its velvet around the skyline, Nova slipped into their bedroom, barefoot, wearing a satin robe that brushed against her thighs like whispering silk. Waring sat by the window, shirt unbuttoned, reading. He looked up and smiled, not the grin he wore for press, not the sly one he flashed when teasing her. This one was soft, warm, present. She walked over and rested her head against his chest. "I missed this," she murmured. "This?" he asked, closing the book. "The quiet, you, me, no schedules, no meetings, just space." He kissed her forehead. "It's always here, even when the world isn't quiet." She turned to him, untying the sash at her waist. The robe parted. His eyes trailed down her body, slow, reverent. But he didn't rush to touch her, not this time. He stood and offered her his hand. No demands, just an invitation. She took it. They didn't speak for a long time. He undressed in front of her, deliberately, slowly, until nothing separated them but breath and trust. They climbed onto the bed together like it was sacred ground. And when he touched her, it wasn't frantic. It was worship. His hands moved over her skin like they were memorizing a prayer. Nova arched beneath him, not in reaction, but in surrender. To him, to this, to the strange, miraculous reality that she could be held like something valuable. "Look at me," he whispered, voice low and thick with emotion. She did. His fingers laced through hers. And when he entered her, it was a slow joining, deep, steady, tender. Nova gasped, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes before she could stop them. "Are you okay?" he asked, pausing inside her. "I've just never—" she began, then trailed off. "Been touched like this?" She nodded. He kissed the tears off her cheek. "You deserve this. You always did." They moved together like rhythm and melody, perfectly aligned. Every breath in sync. Every whisper received. It was slow, almost painful, because it meant something. He held her face in both hands as he moved within her, as if grounding her in the moment. "I love you," he said softly. She cried harder, and when she climaxed, arching, trembling, clinging to him like air, he followed, burying himself in her and moaning her name like it was holy. They lay tangled in silence, hearts still racing. She ran her fingers through his hair. He traced circles on her back. No words were needed. The stillness said enough. Much later, Nova rolled over and stared at the ceiling. "I never thought I'd be here." "In my bed?" Wareen teased gently. "In my life," she whispered. He kissed her shoulder. "Thank you for staying." She turned to him. "You make it easy." "No," he said. "I make it possible. You made the choice." She smiled. "You'll make a great speechwriter one day." He grinned. "I'm better at action." The next morning, he left her a note on the nightstand. Just a few words, handwritten on linen paper. "I never planned for love, but I'm glad it refused to wait for permission." Nova held the note to her chest, eyes closing. And for the first time since the night she walked into that ballroom, she didn't feel like a woman trying to survive. She felt like a woman who had arrived. Success doesn't come with silence. It comes with eyes, expectations, judgment. And for Nova Ray Willoughby, now CEO of Queen's First, wife to one of the most powerful men in the country, and a woman rebuilding her identity in real time, it came with pressure. Crushing, creeping pressure. Emails stacked like bricks. Board meetings ran long. Strategy sessions blurred. She barely had time to eat between calls. Her days began with alarm clocks and ended with spreadsheets glowing in the dark. And somewhere between launching a small business loan program and reviewing internal audit frameworks, she realized she hadn't touched Warren in a week, hadn't even shared a full dinner with him in 5 days. He noticed. He always did. One evening, she came home late, shoes in one hand, exhaustion on her face. The lights were low. Jazz hummed from the record player. A single plate sat on the dining table. Salmon, asparagus, lemon rice, still warm. Warren leaned against the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up. "You missed dinner," he said gently. "I'm sorry," she whispered, dropping her bag. "You said that yesterday." She exhaled. "It's the expansion model. I'm fighting old systems with new ideas and people who don't want to change." "And what about us?" he asked. She paused. "What about us? You're here, but you're not with me." Her throat tightened. "I'm doing everything I can. I didn't marry you so you could break yourself to prove you belong." Her shoulders dropped. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make this about you when I'm already stretched thin." Warren's jaw twitched. "I'm not asking you to choose between love and legacy. I'm asking if you still see me in the middle of your mission." Nova closed her eyes. "I see everything, and it's too much." They slept on separate sides of the bed that night. Not out of anger, but distance. And that silence was louder than any fight. The next morning she stared at herself in the mirror. Dark circles, tired eyes, wrinkled blouse. She looked like every woman trying to be everything. At breakfast, Warren placed a croissant and a green smoothie in front of her. "Eat." She hesitated. "I'm not mad," he said. "I know. I'm just scared we're disappearing into our roles." She looked at him, heart thudding. "Do you think we made a mistake?" He reached across the table, laced his fingers with hers. "No, but I think we need to remember why we started." Later that day, Nova walked into her boardroom with a different energy. She paused before every meeting, took deeper breaths, made more eye contact, delegated more, and when her assistant asked if she needed anything else before heading to Sydney Tower for the joint event, Nova did something she hadn't in weeks. She smiled. That evening, she walked into the gala at Warren's side, arm in arm, a deep plum dress hugging her curves like it remembered her softness. He turned and whispered, "There you are." She kissed his cheek. "I never left." They danced once that night, just once. But it was slow, connected. She let herself exhale against his chest. He pressed his lips to her forehead and whispered, "Whatever you build, just promise it won't cost you." She looked up at him. "I promise." Back at home, she undressed slowly, intentionally, not to seduce, just to be present. He lay back on the bed, watching her with quiet admiration. When she climbed in beside him, he didn't ask for anything. He just wrapped her in his arms. And they fell asleep like that. Not perfect, but whole. Nova stepped into the Sydney Tower lobby just as the rain started to fall outside. She was early, too early. She liked it that way. Time to breathe, observe, settle. Today's event was a panel on innovation and equity, hosted by Warren's Foundation, and featuring several high-profile CEOs, including Nova herself. She was reviewing her notes by the mirrored wall when she saw her. Tall, elegant, perfect posture, hair slicked into a neat chignon, and wearing red, Valencia cross, the X, the one the tabloids loved, the one who once occupied the space Nova now claimed, not just in the media, but in Warren's past. Valencia hadn't aged. If anything, she'd only gotten sharper. She moved with the kind of grace that made people part like waves. Nova didn't blink, didn't flinch. But inside, something coiled. They were introduced during the pre-panel greeting. Warren stood between them, unreadable. "Valencia," he said, "this is Nova." Valencia extended her hand like a queen bestowing permission. "So nice to finally meet you." Nova took it. Firm, calm. "I've heard a lot about you, Valencia added, smiling with just enough curve to imply history. I'm sure you have, Nova replied, returning the smile with precision. They held the handshake a second too long. Waring glanced between them, then stepped back. Excuse me, he said. I need to check the sound tech, and left them alone. Valencia folded her arms. You're doing well for someone who started from unconventional beginnings. Nova tilted her head. Funny. I was thinking the same about you, a flicker in Valencia's eye. I'm not here to ruffle feathers, she said sweetly. Just to reconnect. Nova's gaze didn't soften. With the foundation or with my husband? Valencia's smile thinned. I see why he likes you. You're polished now. Nova leaned in, voice low. I was never rough. You just didn't look close enough. On stage, Nova was poised. Clear. Commanding. She spoke about financial inclusion, transparency, and the power of rebuilding trust in broken systems. The audience leaned in. Even Valencia. Maureen didn't take his eyes off Nova once. And when the panel ended, he met her with a look she'd come to understand fully. Pride. Respect. Love. But the quiet didn't last. That night, back at the penthouse, Nova was unzipping her dress when she said, You didn't tell me she'd be there. Maureen looked up from the closet. Didn't think it mattered. It does. He turned. Why? Because you've never really told me what happened between you two. Maureen exhaled, sat on the bed. We were together 3 years. She wanted the lifestyle, not the life. I wanted partnership. She wanted power. Nova sat beside him. Do you still talk? Only when we're seated next to each other by people who want headlines. You were quiet around her. I was watching you, he said. She looked away. Nova. I don't care that she exists, she said. I care that I didn't see her coming. Maureen reached for her hand. She's my past. You're my everything else. She didn't answer. Not because she didn't believe him, but because jealousy has a way of showing up in echoes, not explosions. At 1:42 a.m., Nova was still awake. She stared at the ceiling, Maureen asleep beside her. His breathing was even. His arm draped across her waist. And still, her mind raced. Not with doubt, but with insecurity. Could love coexist with old history? Could she build something new without fearing what had come before her? She got up quietly and went to the guest room. Not to run, just to think. At 3 a.m., Maureen found her sitting on the rug, knees pulled to her chest. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her, waited. After a few minutes, she spoke. I'm afraid I'm not enough. His head turned sharply. Why? Because people like Valencia don't disappear. They hover, they remind you of what could have been. Maureen's voice was gentle. She was the wrong future. You are the right now. Nova leaned into him. I hate that I feel this way. Don't, he whispered. You're allowed to feel. She looked at him. I just don't want her shadow in our space. Then we'll keep our space lit. He kissed her there on the rug. Soft, slow, certain, and held her until morning. The rain didn't let up that evening. It poured against the tall windows of the Sydney penthouse like a warning, soft at first, then furious. Nova stood barefoot in the kitchen, one hand on her growing belly, the other wrapped around a mug of ginger tea. The baby had started kicking more. Fierce, stubborn jabs, just like Waring. She smiled to herself, but her smile faded as thunder cracked through the sky. Waring was late. He was never late. 7:38 p.m. The door didn't open. Nova tried not to worry. She checked her phone again. A text from earlier. Running over a bit. Interview with a business outlet went long. Don't wait up. But she never waited because she had to. She waited because she wanted to. Because even after all these months, despite their secret marriage, despite the headlines, the interviews, the foundations, and the passionate nights, she still felt like she was learning him. And some parts of him felt just out of reach. She walked into the living room and turned on the record player. A soft jazz track filled the air, low and aching. Memories drifted up. The first time he kissed her neck. The way he whispered, "Stay," when she tried to slip out of bed that morning in Vegas. The way his voice always dropped when he said her name, like prayer wrapped in gravel. Her hand drifted to her belly again. "Your father's late," she whispered. The baby kicked in reply. 8:23 p.m. The elevator chimed. She stood immediately. The door opened. Woreen stepped in, soaked and furious. His black coat clung to him, water streaming down his sleeves. His hair was damp, and there was a tightness in his jaw. Nova moved forward. What happened? But he stopped her with a look. I need to shower, he muttered, already walking past her. Something was wrong. Very wrong. 15 minutes later, he came out wearing just sweatpants and a towel over his neck. His chest still glistened from the shower. His eyes were tired, but alert. Nova waited. He said nothing. She stepped closer. Did someone say something? He hesitated. Then, I saw Valencia again. Nova stiffened. Why? She ambushed me at the interview studio. Said she wanted to set the record straight, make a public apology for how things ended. Nova folded her arms. And what did you say? That there's no record that needs to be corrected. That she's not part of my narrative anymore. Her throat tightened. So why are you like this? Woreen sank into the couch, rubbing his temples. Because she said something, and it got under my skin. Nova sat across from him. What? He hesitated. She said, I'm only with you because I feel guilty, that I see my own past failure in you, that you're my redemption project. The room went cold. Nova blinked once, twice, then stood. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just walked into the guest room. He followed. Nova. She turned to face him. I am not your penance, Woreen. I know. Then why does what she said bother you? He looked her in the eye. Because she touched on the one fear I don't talk about. Silence. I wasn't there for my own mother, he said quietly. She worked 3 jobs, died from a silent heart condition. I didn't see the signs. I was too busy trying to escape poverty to notice the person holding me together was falling apart. Nova's breath caught. I see you fight through things, Nova, he continued, and sometimes I wonder if I love you because you remind me of her, of who I failed. She moved to him slowly. Do you love me? He nodded. Say it. I love you. She placed his hand on her stomach. Then love all of me, not just the parts that make you feel noble. I do. Then prove it by letting me stand beside you, not underneath your guilt, not inside your past, but here, now. He closed his eyes, forehead leaning against hers. I'm trying. I know. That night, she pulled him to bed. But this time, it wasn't frantic. It was quiet, intentional. Every kiss was forgiveness, every touch a promise. Their bodies tangled not in lust, but in truth. The storm continued outside, but inside, there was fire. The morning sun spilled over the Sydney estate like a gentle crown. A new day, but not just any day. Nova had just stepped out onto the terrace wrapped in a silk robe, barefoot, belly, softly rounding, holding a clipboard in one hand and a tablet in the other. She wasn't just glowing from the pregnancy, she was beaming from purpose. Woreen was at the coffee bar, already suited up, black on black as always, flipping through reports on his phone. But his eyes kept darting to her, like he couldn't believe she was real. You're up early, he said without looking up. She smirked. You love saying that as if I ever sleep past 6. Still not used to it, he replied. The woman I married runs my calendar better than my entire executive team. Funny, because I just fired 2 people on your team who missed 2 deadlines, she quipped, tapping the tablet. He grinned. That's my girl. She raised an eyebrow. Correction. That's your wife. And she meant it. Over breakfast, soft croissants, fresh berries, and his favorite French roast, Nova laid out the blueprint. A women in finance incubator, she said, eyes sparking. Not just scholarships. We'll do fellowships, mentorships, and boardroom shadowing experiences. Woreen leaned in. You want to start a foundation? I want us to start one, she corrected. Because when I walked into that investment bank years ago in my threadbare coat and knockoff heels, I didn't just need money. I needed someone who believed in me before I was impressive. Woreen paused. His jaw flexed. You're right. Her eyes softened. You're always talking about legacy, Woreen. This is legacy, empowerment that lives past us. He reached for her hand. Then let's do it. Full board, full funding. You'll chair it. Her brows lifted. You sure? Your PR team might panic. He chuckled. Let them. I married a woman who rewrote my story. It's time the world knows you're not just beside me, you're standing with me. 2 weeks later, headlines exploded across every business and lifestyle publication. Nova Sydney too. Chair Landmark Women in Finance Initiative, with full backing from billionaire husband power couple. Sets $50 million pledge for underrepresented female finance leaders from homeless banker to global. Force Nova Sydney redefines wife of a CEO. Suddenly the media wasn't just talking about Wareen anymore. They were talking about them. The launch event was everything Nova had dreamed of, held at the Metropolitan Finance Hall, adorned, with gold accents and soft lighting. Women from all corners of the industry flew in for it. She stepped onto the stage in a sleek burgundy dress, eyes fierce, voice steady. "I didn't come from power," she began, "but I always had purpose. And sometimes, purpose is enough to make power come find you." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. But Wareen didn't watch her like an executive watching a speech. He watched her like a man seeing his heartbeat on stage. After she spoke, he walked up beside her and whispered, "Tell me again how I ever thought I was the powerful one in this marriage." She smiled. "You weren't wrong, you were just alone. Now you're not." The rest of the night was a blur of handshakes, interviews, champagne, and celebration. But somewhere around the 11th conversation, Nova excused herself and slipped out onto the balcony. Wareen followed. She was looking out at the skyline, breathing in the night air. "You did it," he said behind her. "No," she corrected. "We did it." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands resting gently on her belly. "You're not just carrying our child," he whispered, lips near her ear. "You're carrying a new chapter for women like you. Women who never got a fair shot." She turned in his arms. "You gave me a shot, Wareen." "No," he said firmly. "I gave you room. You took the shot." That night, they didn't need fire between them to feel intimate. They had something deeper. Alignment, shared purpose, the quiet knowing that their bond was bigger than bodies. It was belief. And as they lay in bed, her head resting on his chest, his hand caressing her arm, Nova whispered, "This is the kind of power I dreamed of. Not money, impact, and love." He kissed her forehead. "And you, Nova Sydney, are the most powerful woman I know." It was the same ballroom, same chandeliers, same scent of fresh orchids hanging in the air, same velvet curtains draped like a curtain call on the city's elite. But this time, everything was different. Nova wasn't standing by the coat check in worn heels. She wasn't fidgeting with a name badge that read temporary staff. She wasn't invisible. Tonight, she was the guest of honor. The gala was for the annual Global Wealth Impact Awards, and this year, the Sydney Foundation's work in women-led finance was the talk of the industry. Invitations had gone out with her name etched in gold foil, and the guest list read like a Fortune 500 summit. Cameras lined the red carpet outside the venue. As the black Rolls-Royce pulled up, reporters braced. The door opened, and first stepped Wareen, imposing, elegant, timeless. Then came Nova. She wore an emerald green gown that shimmered like royalty under the lights. Her hair cascaded in loose curls, her makeup warm and glowing, her posture straight with the confidence of a woman who had conquered more than just poverty. She had conquered perception. As they entered the ballroom, the room didn't pause. It rose. Applause erupted. Photographers clamored. Guests turned in awe. Inside, the marble floors gleamed, polished like mirrors. But Nova wasn't here to admire reflections. She was here to make one. Then it happened. A server approached with a tray of champagne. Same silver tray. Same crisp white gloves. But Nova recognized her. The woman. Her name was Clarice. Nova remembered. Years ago, this woman had once shooed her away when she tried to grab a napkin. "Staff, wait outside," she'd snapped. Now, Clarice smiled nervously. "Champagne, ma'am?" Nova held her gaze for a moment, then took a flute, gently. "Thank you." The woman blinked. You look familiar." Nova smiled. "I should. I used to clean these floors." Clarice's jaw dropped, but Nova had already turned, sashaying back toward the center of the room, leaving behind stunned silence and grace in her wake. At the front of the gala, the spotlights swept the stage. And now, the MC boomed. "We welcome our keynote speaker and this evening's most impactful honoree, Mrs. Nova Sydney." The room thundered. Wareen stood as she walked past him, brushing his hand. "You got this," he whispered. She nodded once, then ascended the stage like she was born for it. Nova looked out at the sea of black ties and sequins. Then she said, calmly, clearly. "I've stood in this ballroom before, but not like this." She paused. "I once polished these floors on my knees, hoping no one would notice I was starving, while praying someone, anyone, would see what I could become." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "But tonight, I'm not here to talk about what I lacked. I'm here to talk about what I learned." She gripped the podium. "I learned that you don't have to be born into rooms like this to belong in them. You just need vision, grit, and one person crazy enough to believe in you." Her eyes scanned the crowd until they met Warren's. "He believed in me, but I had to believe in myself first." The standing ovation came before she even finished. Not just for her words, but for what she represented. A woman who had come full circle, from unseen to unforgettable. After the speech, she was flooded with well-wishers, CEOs, bankers, philanthropists. But it wasn't until she stepped aside to breathe that she noticed him. Mr. Langston, her old floor manager. He stood awkwardly near the exit, holding a wine glass like it might spill if he breathed too hard. "Nova," he said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything." She walked over, cool, composed. "Didn't expect to see you here." He gave a dry chuckle. "Neither did I. But my daughter, she's in your fellowship program, said your story inspired her." Nova's eyes softened. "Then I'm glad." He hesitated. "I wasn't kind back then." "No," she replied. "You weren't." A long pause. Then he added, "But thank you for what you're doing and for not letting people like me define you." Nova gave him a single nod. "We all grow, some sooner than others." Later that evening, Warren found her by the balcony, watching the skyline glitter like a necklace over the city. "Full circle?" he asked, handing her a glass. She took it. "Not quite. Full spiral would mean I ended up where I started." He tilted his head. "Then what would you call it?" She looked at him. "Full ascension." The gala had wound down. The speeches delivered, the glasses emptied, the applause now only an echo in the grand ballroom's high ceilings. But something lingered in the air, unspoken, electric. Nova had just made history on that stage. Now it was Warren's turn to make a memory of his own. He watched her from across the marble floor, the way she laughed politely with admirers, the way the lights caught her silhouette like a sculpture come to life. And he knew it was time. No fanfare, no hiding behind circumstance, no wine, no confusion, just truth, just love, just her. The pianist resumed with a soft medley of strings, casting an ambient hush across the room. Then suddenly the lights dimmed slightly. A soft spotlight illuminated the center of the ballroom. Nova turned, confused at first, until she saw him. Warren stood alone at the heart of the room, his black tuxedo crisp. No bow tie, shirt slightly undone like he wanted to be vulnerable. His expression wasn't polished. It was raw, open, real. He held nothing in his hands, yet everything in his gaze. "Nova," his voice echoed, drawing every eye in the room. A hush fell. Even the string instruments paused. "You once told me that a proposal doesn't need diamonds or chandeliers, just sincerity." He took a step closer. "I failed you the first time. I was drunk, desperate, not present." Another step. "But now, tonight, I am fully awake, and every part of me wants to do this right." Nova blinked, frozen. He was doing it. Right here, in front of everyone. Warren dropped to one knee. This time, sober. This time, clear. This time, intentional. From his coat pocket, he pulled a new ring. Sleek, minimalist. A single stone, but bold, just like her. "I don't want a wife who fits into my world. I want a woman who builds it beside me." He looked up. "You changed my life, Nova, from the inside out. Not with strategy, not with silence, but with soul." He exhaled. "So, Nova, will you marry me? Not out of convenience, not because the headlines want us to, but because I am nothing without the fire you bring into every room." The room stood breathless. Time slowed. She looked down at him, this man who had once treated her like a puzzle to be solved. And now, he offered himself as the question begging for her answer. Nova stepped forward and said, soft but strong, "Now I say yes." She knelt down beside him, wide awake. The ballroom erupted, not in noise, but in emotion. The staff who once served her now clapped for her. The tycoons who once questioned her now raised glasses to her, and Warren Sidney, who once tried to own her, now only hoped to earn her. As he slipped the ring on her finger, she whispered close to his ear, "This time, it's not rescue, it's partnership." He kissed her hand. Anne replied, "This time, it's forever." Cut to, later that night. Nova and Warren slow danced in the now empty ballroom, barefoot, alone. No music but the hush of their heartbeats. No audience but the shadows of chandeliers. "Why here?" she asked. He looked around. "Because this is where you first walked away from me, and I wanted it to be the same place you'd walk back into my arms, on your terms." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "I didn't walk away. I walked toward myself." He nodded. "And now we walk forward, together." The camera would have caught them from above, two souls spinning slowly in the middle of the same place they had once shattered, but now rebuilt, as equals. The night after the gala, Nova sat alone on the penthouse balcony. The city lights glittered below her like a million moving answers, but tonight none of them mattered. Not the board meetings, not the spotlight, not even the proposal she'd said yes to. Her ring sparkled, but her eyes shimmered for a different reason. Because grief doesn't fade just because love finally found you. It echoes. And tonight, it returned. She held the old bracelet in her hand. A woven band, frayed at the edges, once electric blue, now faded to sky. It wasn't made of gold or diamonds, but it was the last thing he ever gave her. Flashback, 10 years ago, Nova stood outside the shuttered brick building. A big red sign read, "Closed permanently, effective immediately." Inside, a man paced back and forth, his fingers trembling as he gripped his phone. His name was Marcus. Nova's older brother, her protector, her mentor. He was only 29, but that day he looked twice his age. "Marcus." Nova stepped inside. He looked up, startled, his brown eyes hollow. "They fired everyone," he mumbled. "No severance, no warning." She blinked. "But you were their top analyst." He laughed bitterly. "I was their top cost." He turned to the wall. Pictures of past team awards, promotions, a framed article titled, "Finance's Future Black Star." He ripped it off the wall. "They don't see you as a person," he whispered. "Just another decimal." Nova stepped forward, voice shaking. "Then leave. Start over." He shook his head. "You don't understand, Nova. We're not them. One fall. And they don't catch us. They let us bleed out." That night, they went home in silence. Marcus tried to stay strong, for her, but his spirit was breaking. He applied for job after job, took a position far beneath his skill set, laughed it off like it was just a rough patch. But Nova knew. The light behind his ambition was flickering. 3 months later, she came home to a note, one paragraph, folded neatly beside that same blue bracelet. "Don't cry for me, Nova. Just promise me. You'll find a way to make them see us as more than numbers, as people. Promise me. You'll take our name higher than they ever imagined." She found him that night, too late, and her world fell quiet, back to present day. On the balcony, Nova pressed the bracelet to her lips. Tears spilled freely now, hot, unapologetic, holy, because grief wasn't weakness. It was memory refusing to fade. And her drive, the one people always praised? It wasn't ambition. It was mourning. She didn't rise in finance because she loved numbers. She rose because she lost Marcus to a system that made him feel disposable, because no one fought for him. So she vowed she'd fight for others. Warren quietly stepped outside, sensing the shift in the air. He saw her shoulders curled forward, trembling. She didn't hide her tears. She didn't apologize for them. She just turned, held the bracelet up. "This," she whispered, "is why I started." Warren didn't speak. He simply sat beside her, held her hand, listened, because some stories aren't meant to be fixed, only heard. She leaned into him slowly. "I made it here, Warren, but every room I enter, I still wonder if he would have been proud or angry I joined the same world that killed him." Warren exhaled deeply. "Nova, you didn't become the system. You're changing it. Every time you speak, mentor, hire, you prove he didn't die in vain." And with that, she broke fully, not into pieces, but into truth. "They say success is the best revenge. But for me, Success was a grave I refused to build my life over. I rose not to erase him, but to resurrect the fight he started. The morning air tasted like betrayal. Nova's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from journalists, anxious board, members, and her internal legal counsel, all asking the same question. Are you aware that a whistleblower just accused Iron Trust Bank of laundering funds through an offshore shell? Her coffee sat untouched, because this wasn't just a PR nightmare, it was personal. Her bank, her leadership, her name, under fire. She turned on the television. There it was, a breaking news headline. New CEO, old tactics? Anonymous tip links Iron Trust to Caribbean shell entity used for illicit transfers. Her jaw clenched. The image used wasn't of a building. It was her face. Her success, twisted into suspicion. Maureen rushed into her office moments later, tablet in hand, tie undone, fire in his eyes. I've already put my top cyber forensics team on this. We'll trace the origin of the tip, discredit the media cycle, and get you out of this in 72 hours. Nova looked up, silent. He continued, voice confident. We'll neutralize the narrative before it mutates. You won't even need to speak to the press. But Nova stood still. Then she said something that made Waring freeze. No, he blinked. Nova, this isn't about pride. It's about protecting your reputation. She stepped closer. I know, but you're not going to fix this for me, Waring. She paused. For years, I've fought to be seen as more than someone's project or someone's rescue mission. If I let you clean this up, that's exactly what I'll be. Waring inhaled slowly. He understood. This wasn't defiance. This was liberation. That night, Nova called an emergency press conference. No spokesperson, no script, no PR polish. Just her. Raw, calm, focused. Cameras clicked as she stepped to the podium, her navy blue suit crisp, her expression unapologetic. She began, Today, a whistleblower accused Iron Trust of facilitating financial crimes. Let me be very clear. I welcome full transparency, a federal audit, and an open-door investigation, because the house I built was not built on sand. When I took over this bank, I promised integrity, not just for my team, but for every single woman and person of color who looks up at buildings like this and wonders if they'll ever be allowed inside. That promise doesn't end because someone throws mud. The media held their breath. No one interrupted. Even the cynical among them were stunned. She continued, her voice gaining strength. This isn't about denying a scandal. This is about proving our systems work, because I put them in place. And if any of my team is complicit, I will be the first to hand them over myself. Later that week, a full audit began. The regulators scoured thousands of transactions. Her staff was interviewed under oath. One former manager cracked, admitting he'd fabricated the tip after being terminated for harassment months earlier. It wasn't a real scandal. It was revenge. And Nova? She didn't just survive it. She rose from it. The news cycle shifted overnight. Nova Sydney clears her name, stands tall against false allegations. Public poise, private power, the CEO who faced fire without flinching. Her bank survived the storm because she built it for weather. Waring watched from the background, pride in his chest, hands in his pockets. He wanted to hold her, celebrate her. But more than that, he respected her. Because in that moment, Nova Sydney wasn't just powerful. She was untouchable. Later that evening, she returned to the penthouse, exhausted but whole. Waring greeted her with a quiet nod. No questions, no praise, just a glass of water and a soft gaze that said, I see you. She finally whispered, I handled it. He nodded. I never doubted. She stepped closer, resting her forehead to his chest. The silence between them said more than words ever could. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a standard. They thought I needed saving, but what I needed was to stand alone so they could see I'd already built my own armor. Not from money, not from his power, but from every test that tried to break me and failed. The ballroom was a mirror of the one she'd once cleaned, but this time, her name wasn't on a staff checklist. It was lit in bold gold letters across the towering screen. Keynote speaker, Nova Sydney, CEO of Iron Trust. Every chair was filled. Reporters, executives, aspiring women in finance, all waiting for the woman whose resilience had become more than a headline. It had become a blueprint. The host introduced her with a voice that trembled in awe. Then the room fell silent. Nova took the stage. No notes, no teleprompter, just her, dressed in a sharp white pantsuit, soft curls cascading down her shoulders, eyes blazing with command. She wasn't there to charm. She was there to shake the ground. Years ago, she began, I walked into a bank and was told to wait outside. They assumed I was in the wrong building. A soft murmur rippled through the audience. They saw my skin, they saw my curves, they heard my accent, and they decided I couldn't possibly belong. She paused. Her eyes scanned the front row, young women clinging to every word. But I did belong, not because someone opened a door for me, but because I kicked one down. Applause broke like thunder, but Nova lifted a hand. She wasn't finished. For years, I was introduced as someone's +1, then as someone's miracle project, then as the woman who dated the billionaire. I smiled. I played nice. I let them call me mysterious. I let them whisper I got lucky. She took a breath, her voice rising. But let me say this, and make it clear. I'm not a wife. I'm not a fantasy. I'm not someone's footnote. I'm a damn movement. The room erupted, not in polite claps, but standing ovation, roaring cheers, and tearful nods from women who felt that declaration in their bones. But Nova didn't soak it in. She kept speaking. Finance, to me, isn't about spreadsheets and profit margins. It's about justice. It's about healing. It's about rewriting the rules that kept women, especially women who look like me, locked out. My brother died after losing a job in this very system. His dreams vanished in a world that judged him before he ever had a chance. So when I sat behind the CEO's desk, I wasn't chasing power. I was honoring his fight. The room quieted again. Reverence. Then she turned personal. One final punch. And every woman who's ever been underestimated, interrupted, passed, over, or told to wait outside. Let them watch you walk past them. Let them witness you buy the damn building. Let them learn your name, because they'll never forget it again. The lights behind her flickered to a slideshow, photos of Nova launching a new mentorship program called Beyond the Glass Ceiling. It would provide funding, education, and real job placement for 1,000 women from underrepresented communities. The audience gasped, and then cried, because she wasn't just talking. She was doing. A reporter tweeted, mid-speech, Nova Sydney just redefined what it means to be a CEO. I came here expecting strategy. I left with purpose. After the speech, cameras followed her as she exited backstage. But she didn't wait for press. She slipped into a quiet hallway, heart still racing. And standing there was Wareen, not in a tux, not with a bouquet, but with pride shining so loud it filled the air between them. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Nova stepped into his arms, whispering against his collarbone. I finally said it. Out loud. Wareen smiled into her hair. No one will ever make you invisible again. Some people are born with seats at the table. Others build their own chairs and bring them anyway. But me, I didn't just want a seat. I wanted the damn room. And now, I own it. The jet touched down in Florence just as the sun began to fold itself into the Tuscan hills. No paparazzi. No press releases. No boardroom politics. Just love, quiet and whole. This wasn't a honeymoon. This was something more sacred. A rebirth. Wareen helped Nova down the marble steps of the private jet. He didn't extend his hand like a gentleman. He extended it like a man meeting his match. The red dress she wore shimmered under the golden hour. Not ruby, not maroon. Courage. That's what it looked like. They didn't rush to the cathedral. Instead, they walked the cobblestone streets like teenagers in stolen time. Tourists didn't stare. Locals didn't interrupt. Because something about them demanded respect. Two souls who had bled, battled, and built, now walking side by side like equals, not saviors or trophies. They reached the villa by twilight. A vineyard spread wide around them, glowing with string lights. Rows of wooden chairs faced a floral archway beneath a weeping willow. It was intimate. 12 guests. No grand spectacle. Only people who had watched the storm and stayed until the clearing. Nova stood at the edge of the arch as Wareen walked to the altar. He turned. Then he saw her. Her dress caught the wind, scarlet silk that whispered revolution. She wore no veil, no gloves, no crown. Only a single gold chain around her neck with a pendant that read, I chose this. There was no priest, just a soft-spoken poet friend who had flown in from Brooklyn. He nodded. And the ceremony began, not with vows, but with silence, the kind of silence you earn after surviving everything. Then Wareen spoke. Nova, you were never an accident. You were the correction. You rewrote everything I thought I knew, about power, about pride, about purpose. He smiled, voice trembling. You didn't save me. You made me save myself, and that's the kind of love I want to wake up to every single day. Nova's lips parted. The first time we stood in front of an altar, I was scared, not of you, but of being forgotten, like my dreams would dissolve into your shadow. She stepped closer. But today, I don't stand in your light. I stand in ours. She reached for his hands. You don't complete me. You meet me. And that's the kind of forever I can say yes to. No rings were exchanged. They already wore them. No rice was thrown. But there were tears, laughter, claps that sounded like healing, and a kiss. Not one to seal a contract, but one that said, we made it, and we still want more. Later that evening, they sat alone on the villa balcony. She kicked off her heels. He unbuttoned his collar. No roles, just Wareen and Nova, two humans who'd chosen again. He poured her wine. She didn't toast to love or success. She raised her glass and whispered, to the accident that wasn't. Wareen chuckled. To the fire that became home. They didn't go to bed in a rush. They danced under the stars with no music, barefoot, reckless. Nova rested her cheek against his chest and whispered, this is what rebirth feels like. And he replied, and you wore red to match the flames you rose from. Sometimes you fall by accident. But if you rise together, that was no accident at all. That was destiny, dressed in red. The moon bathed the villa in silver, painting soft shadows across the stone balcony. Florence slept beneath them. But for Wareen and Nova, sleep was the furthest thing from their minds. The vow renewal was over. The guests had returned to their suites. The musicians had packed up. But out here, beneath the hush of vineyard breezes and moonlight, their second wedding night was just beginning. Wareen leaned against the balcony rail, shirt untucked, eyes fixed on her. Nova had changed out of the red silk into a white slip, barely brushing her thighs. No jewelry, no makeup, no mask. Just her, the version of her that only he was allowed to see. She stepped toward him barefoot, wineglass in hand. But he didn't take the glass. He took her hand instead, and brought her palm to his lips. Slow, intentional, worshipful. You still nervous? She whispered. Wareen smiled, his voice low. No, just in awe. He pulled her into him, his hands tracing the dip of her spine, his mouth brushing against the pulse just below her ear. Nova's breath caught, but she didn't retreat. She leaned in, lips grazing his jaw. Then stop watching me like I'm a miracle, and touch me like I'm yours. He didn't need a second invitation. He lifted her, effortlessly, and carried her back into the suite. The open balcony doors let the wind in, fluttering the curtains like waves. He placed her on the bed, then stood still, just looking, like he'd waited his entire life for this moment to arrive. His hands found her thighs first, parting them gently. He kissed the inside of her knee, then higher, then again. With every kiss, he peeled away more of her tension, more of her armor. Not hurried, not ravenous, reverent. Nova's fingers threaded into his hair as his mouth explored her skin like it held every answer he'd ever needed. She arched beneath him, gasping not from shock, but from recognition. Every touch, every taste, was a new promise written in flesh and fire. He whispered her name between her collarbone and her shoulder, his voice hoarse. She responded with moans that weren't loud, but deep. Soundless surrender. They weren't making love. They were rewriting vows with their bodies. When he finally entered her, it wasn't frantic. It was slow, deliberate, like time itself had decided to pause and bear witness. They moved together, not in rhythm, but in understanding, like every inch of skin remembered pain, and chose joy instead. Nova pulled him closer, her lips brushing his ear. You still love me after everything? Wareen paused, burying his face in her neck. No, she blinked, startled. I love you more because of everything. She smiled, eyes glassy, then flipped him over, straddling him, hair wild, back arched, silhouette glowing against the candlelight. Powerful, in control, beautiful. She leaned forward, hips rolling, and whispered, then let me show you what forever feels like. What followed wasn't just pleasure. It was healing in motion. They kissed with open mouths and unspoken forgiveness, touched like architects building a cathedral out of trust and sweat and heartbeat. When their bodies collapsed, limbs tangled and breathing heavy, the night didn't end. She lay against his chest, tracing the shape of his scars with her fingers. And he kissed her crown like it held scripture. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was earned. Finally, Nova looked up at him, eyes clear, voice soft. I said yes the first time out of fear. She paused, breath trembling. But this time, I choose you. He didn't reply with words. He pulled her close again, held her like she was air, and kissed her like she was his final prayer. Love isn't what survives the fire. It's what's reborn from the ashes, tender, raw, and true. And sometimes, the most sacred vows aren't spoken under arches. They're whispered in moonlight, after the world has gone quiet. They woke with the sun filtering through gauze white curtains. No alarms, no board meetings, no flights to catch. Just two souls in a villa in Florence, finally aligned. Nova stood at the window, wrapped in a silk robe, sipping espresso. Below, the vineyard bloomed with early light. Warren approached from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. Neither of them spoke, because sometimes silence says, we did it. 2 weeks later, they returned home. But everything had changed. Not just their marriage, not just their reputations. Their identities had evolved. Nova walked into the lobby of the city's tallest tower. The press had gathered. Cameras, lights, microphones. But she didn't flinch. She stood at the podium, flanked by Warren and the mayor, as the curtain behind her dropped. And there it was, the Nova Sydney Institute for Finance and Equity. The crowd erupted. She didn't blink, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't apologizing for being seen. Her speech wasn't rehearsed. No cue cards, only truth. When I first walked into a bank, I was just trying to cash a welfare check. They didn't look me in the eye. They didn't say my name. They saw statistics, not dreams. She scanned the room. Reporters, executives, interns. I wasn't supposed to be here. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It becomes your greatest superpower. She paused, stepped away from the mic. Her voice softened, but still carried. This building isn't for me. It's for the girl who sleeps in shelters but balances budgets in her mind. For the boy who lost a scholarship but teaches himself investment terms under streetlights. She looked over at Warren. He was smiling, not proud of her, honored to know her. We don't rise by saving people. We rise by showing them they were powerful all along. And with that, she stepped down from the podium, but the world would never see her the same again. Later that night, on the rooftop of the tower, Nova stood beside the new sign, her name cast in steel and sunset. Warren wrapped an arm around her waist. You did this, he said. She leaned into him. No, we did this. Below them, lights blinked on across the city. Not just buildings, futures. Some stories don't begin with love. They begin with heartbreak, with hunger, with loss. But sometimes, the fall is what clears the way for flight. And if you're lucky, you don't just find someone who sees your worth. You find someone who walks beside you while you reclaim it. If you've ever felt like life robbed you of everything, remember, sometimes the best beginnings start with losing it all. Comment "Rebirth" below if you believe in second chances. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs. A reminder that power isn't something you wait for. It's something you reclaim